My name is Sophie Bennett, and I am 30 years old. Have you ever sat in a room full of family and felt completely invisible? Not because people hated you, not because they were openly cruel, but because they simply acted like you didn't matter. Imagine spending years being ignored, forgotten, and overlooked by the very people who were supposed to love you. Then imagine those same people suddenly calling, texting, visiting, and pretending they cared the moment money entered the picture. That is exactly what happened to me. My family ignored me for years, right up until my grandfather died. Then, overnight, everyone wanted something from me. What they didn't know was that Grandpa had spent years quietly watching everything, and he had a final surprise waiting for all of us. Growing up, I was the child nobody paid much attention to. My older brother, Jason, was the star athlete. Every game he played became a family event. My younger sister, Emily, was outgoing, funny, and constantly surrounded by friends. She could walk into a room and immediately become the center of attention. And me? I was the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who never caused trouble. At first, I thought being easy to manage was a good thing. But as the years passed, I started noticing a pattern. When Jason scored points in a game, my parents celebrated for days. When Emily won a school competition, the entire family talked about it for weeks. When I brought home straight A's, my parents smiled and said, "That's nice." Then the conversation moved on. I told myself it didn't bother me, but it did. More than I wanted to admit. Every birthday felt smaller than everyone else's. Every achievement felt unnoticed. Every accomplishment seemed to disappear into the background. The only person who truly paid attention to me was my grandfather. Grandpa Henry was different from everyone else in the family. He never cared about popularity. He never cared about appearances. He cared about people. Whenever we spoke, he listened carefully. He remembered details. He asked thoughtful questions. Most importantly, he made me feel important. Every Sunday afternoon, I visited him. Sometimes we talked about books. Sometimes we talked about life. Sometimes we sat quietly on his porch drinking iced tea while watching the neighborhood. Those afternoons became my escape. They reminded me that at least one person saw me. As I got older, the distance between me and the rest of my family grew wider. When I graduated from college with honors, my parents mailed a card. When Jason injured his knee during a local tournament, they drove across the state to support him. When Emily announced she was moving into a new apartment, the family threw her a celebration party. When I accepted my first professional job, nobody even called. Eventually, I stopped expecting anything. I focused on my own life. I built my career. I rented a small apartment. I worked hard and saved money. I learned how to rely on myself instead of waiting for approval that never came. Through all of it, Grandpa remained my biggest supporter. He called every week. He remembered every promotion. He celebrated every success. When nobody else seemed interested in my life, Grandpa always was. Then, when I was 29 years old, everything changed. Grandpa became seriously ill. The doctors tried several treatments, but his condition continued to worsen. I visited him whenever possible. Some days he was energetic and talkative. Other days he barely had enough strength to sit up. Still, whenever I walked into the room, his face lit up. One afternoon, he asked me to sit beside him. His voice was weaker than usual. He looked at me and said, "Never let people decide your value based on how much attention they give you." At the time, I thought he was simply sharing advice. I didn't realize those words would soon mean so much more. A few weeks later, Grandpa passed away. The loss devastated me. The funeral was crowded with relatives. People cried. People shared stories. People talked about how much Grandpa had meant to them. I listened quietly. Part of me felt comforted by the memories. Another part noticed how many relatives had barely visited him during his final years. After the funeral, conversations slowly shifted toward the reading of the will. I didn't think much about it. Grandpa had always lived a modest life. I assumed there wouldn't be much to discuss. A week later, the family gathered at a lawyer's office. The atmosphere felt strangely tense. Everyone seemed unusually interested in the details. The attorney began reading the will. Several family members received personal items, old photographs, jewelry, family keepsakes. Then the attorney revealed something nobody expected. Grandpa had quietly built a significant investment portfolio over the years. The value of his estate was much larger than anyone realized. Suddenly, the room became very quiet. The attorney continued reading. My parents received an inheritance. Jason received an inheritance. Emily received an inheritance. Several charities received donations. Then the attorney reached the final section. He looked directly at me. Sophie Bennett. My heart started racing. The attorney explained that Grandpa had left me his house, his investment accounts, and the majority of the remaining estate. For a moment, I honestly thought I had misunderstood. The room was completely silent. Then whispers began spreading around the table. Confused, I asked whether there had been a mistake. The attorney shook his head. He handed me a sealed letter. Your grandfather wanted you to have this. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. As I read the first few lines, tears filled my eyes. Grandpa wrote that he had spent years observing the family. He saw who visited. He saw who called. He saw who made time. He saw who only appeared when it was convenient. Then I reached a sentence that broke me completely. You showed up when nobody was watching. By the time I finished reading, I was crying openly. The meeting ended soon afterward. That should have been the end of the story. Instead, it was only the beginning. For years, my phone had barely rung. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk. My parents called almost daily. Jason invited me to lunch. Emily started sending cheerful messages. Even distant cousins reached out. At first, I hoped maybe Grandpa's death had reminded everyone about the importance of family. Then the requests started. One relative needed help paying bills. Another wanted money for a business idea. A cousin asked for an investment. An aunt suggested helping family members who were struggling financially. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Nobody wanted a relationship. They wanted access. One evening, my parents invited me to dinner. Halfway through the meal, my father explained that retirement was becoming difficult. My mother suggested that since I had inherited so much, perhaps I could help support them. I sat quietly for several seconds. Then I asked a question. How many times did you visit me during the last 3 years? Neither answered. I asked whether they remembered the company where I worked. Silence. I asked whether they knew the date of my last promotion. Nothing. The room became uncomfortable. Finally, my father accused me of being bitter. Maybe I was. But bitterness wasn't the real issue. The issue was that relationships cannot be ignored for years and then magically repaired when money appears. Love requires effort. Family requires effort. Connection requires effort. Those things cannot be purchased. Over the following months, I made several important decisions. I honored every charitable donation Grandpa requested. I invested responsibly. I repaired his house and preserved many of the memories inside it. I also helped a few people who had genuinely supported me throughout my life. But I refused to become the solution to everyone's financial problems. Some relatives disappeared almost immediately. Others complained behind my back. A few became openly angry. Their reactions revealed exactly what mattered to them. The people who cared about me remained. The people who cared about money left. As time passed, I often thought about Grandpa's final lesson. For most of my life, I believed being ignored meant I was less important. I believed attention determined value. I was wrong. My value existed whether people recognized it or not. Grandpa understood that. He saw me when nobody else did. He appreciated me when nobody else bothered. And in the end, he left behind something far more valuable than money. He left proof that kindness matters, that loyalty matters, that showing up matters. My family ignored me for years until Grandpa died. Then everyone wanted something from me. But thanks to Grandpa, I finally learned that the people who only appear when they need something are not the people who deserve the most space in your life. The people who stand beside you when they have nothing to gain are the ones worth keeping. And that lesson changed my life forever.